The series of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure is a vast one, currently spanning 9 parts and over 3 decades of publication. The Jojo series is quite the behemoth. There's so much variety in writing in each and any given part that everyone's favorite one differs. And yet, it feels like Part 6 Stone Ocean is the middle child of the franchise, the least talked about, the least amount of fanfare, and with its most recent anime adaptation, the opportunity for it to be in the spotlight was fumbled. I love Part 6. While it is mostly a mixed bag, there are some real highs and some real lows that Stone Ocean has to offer. In this video, I want to explore more of what Part 6 has to offer on the greater whole of JoJo and why I feel like it's misunderstood. The ending of Part 6 holds a great significance for where the series heads, but I will touch on that later. Also, for a disclaimer, I'm not strictly talking about just the anime or just the manga. I'm looking at the story as a whole, so I will be touching on say the anime adaptation in some instances, but it's mainly about the story. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Stone Ocean. Stone Ocean is the 6th part in the JoJo series, with its original run starting in December 7, 1999, all the way through April 8, 2003. The big key difference between JoJo parts is not only its setting, but its main character. So to start, I want to talk about Jolyne. Jolyne Kujo is 19 years old, and she's the daughter of Jotaro Kujo, who we all know is pretty much the face of the series at this point. Jotaro has a role in 4 of the 6 parts that have been adapted so far, but regardless, Jotaro is absent in Jolyne's life. She resides in Florida, and we start the story with her getting arrested after being framed for a drunk driving accident. She is then later sentenced to the Green Dolphin Street prison, where most of Stone Ocean takes place. Jolyne's introduction and incarceration was handled really well. We got a perfectly balanced scene to see how Jolyne's brazen personality is on display. One of Jolyne's core character traits is her willpower to always fight to make things right by her. The intro scenes are always really important for the beginning of a new JoJo part, and I'm glad to say Part 6 does a great job in making us sympathize for Jolyne's circumstance. Jolyne is easily tied with Part 2 Joseph as one of the most charismatic and entertaining leads. Araki's insistence to have a female-dominated cast in Part 6 was super refreshing, and the crazy characters in the female ward of the prison were so fun. Not to mention Fedozai's amazing performance as Jolyne. There couldn't have been anyone more perfectly suited for the role, not to mention her love for JoJo and her aspiration to be Jolyne being a direct driver to her career as a voice actress. In Part 5, I feel like the Jo Bros and the side characters stole the show over Giorno, where I feel like it's the complete opposite in Stone Ocean. Jolyne takes forefront and truly makes it known that it is her story. The conflict of Jolyne needing to get Jotaro's memory and stand disc back is a basic yet strong one. Her personal battle with Pucci ends up leading to her being more invested in the greater stakes of what he is trying to achieve, and thus it makes Jolyne's involvement to the story more seamless and immersive. The trials and hardships she faces that Pucci is unrelentingly sending her way makes Jolyne have one of the most difficult tasks that she has to take on, and I'll talk more about Pucci and how he really does make this part something special. Jolyne is this amalgamation of everything that makes a main character in JoJo work. Her fun personality, her beautiful design, her versatile stand, and her motives. Jolyne is my favorite protagonist in the JoJo series, and this started this shift in the series to have more grounded personal conflicts that you'll see in the Steel Ball Run race, or even in JoJo Lands, as early on as that series is. The chemistry she has with all the other inmates is really fun too. Even smaller characters like Gwes stick in your mind because of the fun interactions they had between their fight, and just the way they interact with each other throughout the story in passerby or situations. With the story being set in a prison, it makes every character super desperate to self-serve themselves or get a leg up on others in any way possible. While I do hate the absence of Hermes and what feels like half the story, I do appreciate the spotlight on other characters cycling through and helping Jolyne. Emporio, Weather, Anasui, Foo Fighters, they all have this dedicated camaraderie to Jolyne, and it feels even more endearing because of, like I said before, the setting being so hostile and having it be really hard to have people to trust. A lot of people chop up Stone Ocean to be unremarkable because of the fights, and while I do think the fights are an important aspect of JoJo, there are a lot of other factors that make the series as great as it is. Jolyne Stan's Stone Free is top tier in terms of design and function. The reason I love stands like Crazy Diamond is because of the really basic concept with a super high skill ceiling. While Stone Free is just simply making threads with your body, no situation plays out the same when it's used. Jolyne is such a critical thinker and her stand replicates that. It gives her the tool set to handle most of the fights on her own even if she lacks the physical capabilities. But before I touch upon the fights any further, I want to focus on the location these fights take place in. The Green Dolphin Street prison is a setting that can go either way. On one hand, being confined in one area for a majority of the story can be tiring, but Araki wanted to further improve his skills as a writer. For Part 6, Araki went and toured a real-life maximum security state prison in America to gather reference material. Experiencing the hostility and downright poor living conditions firsthand, it was then translated to Part 6 having this really cruel theming. Jolyne faces a lot of conflicts throughout the prison. Whether it's fighting other inmates or having to deal with the guards or staff around the prison who will do anything to just treat her unfairly as possible. There's a lot of corruption that occurs, and it really does make you get the sense that Jolyne is against the world here and nothing will be on her side. Now, there are a lot of opportunities in Part 6 for Jolyne to explore and see various sectors of the prison. There are segments outdoors, in the cells, and some scenes take place in an ultra-security housing unit. While it only sticks to the one prison, it is very diversified enough to never feel like you're comfortable there. What makes JoJo really unique is that it can explore anything Araki wants to. It is nice to have a setting so thoroughly explored. Sure, it isn't a worldwide or countrywide setting, but it feels equally massive when there is so much planning and foresight in creating this fully realized prison. I will say that the anime adaptation did a really good job of constantly making the space feel real and consistent. You start to memorize certain locations and sections of this prison and start kind of piecing things together as Jolyne and the crew have certain meetup spots, or there's certain things in daily life that they go to, and you'll recognize that, like, yeah, of course the dining hall would be a commonplace location. I think it's utterly ridiculous to say that the prison has no design, but there totally is. While it's not aesthetically pleasing, it perfectly represents the culture and society it resides in prison life, and as well as make it feel inhospitable as possible. There are many design elements that go into making the prison feel the way it does, like the sickening greenish gray that brandishes the brick, or the labyrinth-like layout, or the grimy bars, metal, and rust, and just overall dirty grunge to everything. All these elements, while not pleasing to look at, give a more authentic experience to Part 6 and giving it its own unique identity. So yeah, that's the location, but obviously there's characters that inhabit the space, so... Yet another core component of JoJo is the side characters. I'm glad to say that Stone Ocean has a great cast. Hermes and Foo Fighters are the ride-or-die besties that shine a little bit of fun into desperate situations. Emporio is a very vital character to the story and his involvement with the prison. Weather Forecast is direct relation to Pucci as well as very intriguing subplot. Then you have Anasui, who makes me conflicted because he's very much a psychopath, and I shouldn't love him, but every time he's on screen I'm left smiling from ear to ear watching him trying to flirt with Jolyne. Every character has their role to play, but they ultimately don't take away from Jolyne's experience, like I said before. Oftentimes, the characters in Part 6 kind of act on their own and just do what they think is a best intention. So you'll see characters do things unbeknownst to Jolyne, and these characters end up sacrificing a lot for their shared goal. With Part 6 having the theming of everyone struggling with their own conflicts or try to fight the past that is coming to haunt them. There are a lot of heartfelt moments, like with Hermes finally getting vengeance for the death of her sister Gloria on Sportsmax, or Foo Fighters unfortunately dying, doing one final act to throttle Pucci and help Jolyne out, as she's very thankful to Jolyne for helping her kind of find her path to an identity. And of course you have the final I am Emporio speech at the end of the series, which honestly is one of the strongest moments in all of JoJo as a whole.
ジョリオです。エンポリオ。僕の名前は。僕の名前はエンポリオです。
God, that never ceases to make me choke up. This is a very emotional part, just like part 5. The loss of any member is truly heartbreaking, but just goes to show the prowess of Pucci. There are a lot of strong stands in Stone Ocean, but they also feel underutilized. In this part, a lot of the characters are learning how to operate or develop their stands, so it's unique in the sense that a lot of these fights are very sloppy, and it's rare to see the characters live on enough to see their stand fully fleshed out. The villains of Part 6 are inmates that Father Pucci plants stand discs into in hopes that they'll get in the way of Jolyne and crew during their journey to reach him. Usually a stand is formed based off of one's personality and psyche, so it's cool to see stands kind of Frankenstein meshed onto people that don't really mesh well with the stand, or it's not their stand, so it's kind of fighting against that. And while it logically leads to these stands being weaker, not being from their original user, it still has a lot to offer and creates some intriguing dynamics and fights to Part 6 that no other part also has. Seeing the stand disc kind of get commodified is also a really cool thing. It's also weird that Araki went the route of kind of going realistic with this approach, because he did acknowledge that the people with these meshed on stands wouldn't be as strong because they're not stands that resonate with who they are as a person. So it does lead to a lot of the fights in the series to be kind of one-sided in a sense, or very gimmicky and kind of dealt with very easily. With most of the fights in Part 6 being kind of lackluster, I will say that the designs of the villains and smaller antagonists are really strong. Characters like Rikyo versus Lang Wrangler and Mirashon all have such amazing designs and personalities. The fights themselves, some of them aren't, all that memorable, but the personalities and the setting that revolves around these fights are what make them stick in your mind. Mew Mew and her stand, Jailhouse Lock, ends up being one of the biggest highlights of Stone Ocean for me. So with that, let's talk about the fights of Part 6. To circle back, I want to open this up with my favorite fight in Stone Ocean and talk more about Mew Mew and her stand, Jailhouse Lock.
私のジェイルハウスロックの仕事はスタンド使いを閉じ込めておくことだからな。
This fight takes place in the 2/3 kind of sect of the story, and this is where Pucci does not want to mess around anymore, so this fight ends up leaving kind of a devastating effect and wasting Jolyne's time and giving him enough time to kind of set his plans in order. So how does it happen? Well, Jolyne gets incapacitated and hit with an effect of Mew Mew's Jailhouse Lock, a stand that makes its target only remember up to 3 pieces of information at a time. With this ability in effect, we have to watch and see Jolyne struggle to remember what has happened and try to get clues to get back on track. And due to the nature of this ability, Mew Mew is able to keep an arm's length distance close to Jolyne at all times, having Jolyne's memory completely be blanked after a new piece of information had been registered to her. It only makes sense that she would not remember Mew Mew, so it makes the perfect watchdog kind of situation. A lot of the fun is seeing how Jolyne tries to hold on to any information that she can for as long as possible, as well as communicate to herself in the future. It's really funny seeing Jolyne get sidetracked or be right on the cusp of figuring something out, while also just being right next to Mew Mew the whole time. A lot of this fight pays homage to the movie Memento by Christopher Nolan, and there are a lot of similarities, and obviously her stitching words onto herself is kind of just like the tattoos. And this fight is really unique even for JoJo, and I love the Jailhouse Lock stand design. There's a lot of unconventional fighting with, JoJo being a mind battle type series, but this fight demonstrates that to its peak form. Having Jolyne on her own during this arc is pretty good because up until this point she's been surrounded by people willing to help her out, so it was nice to have a solo situation before Emporio steps in towards the end. This fight also makes a good marker point to see if Jolyne can truly have the resolve to get past Pucci's less disposable and more competent stand users. I also love how Mew Mew can say or do anything and just not face any repercussions, because no matter what she does, she can just be forgotten about easily. So it also leaves Mew Mew's taunting to be really funny in that aspect, as she can just do whatever she wants to Jolyne. And the final showdown at the end is nothing to scoff at either. Seeing how Jolyne finds workarounds to get past this information limiting factor of jailhouse lock, it's really cool to see how she uses something like a mirror to remember multiple pieces of information kind of be condensed into one, using the fact that if she focuses on the mirror, that only counts as one piece of new information to focus on. It's really satisfying to see Mew Mew get done in, because man, her whole arc was very annoying, and you kind of feel with Jolyne and the frustration of what's going on. Even more so because she's kind of oblivious and you're just sitting there behind the screen trying to like help her out. Also, making the user of this fight being someone who's employed by the prison also gives a metaphorical win to this, where Jolyne actually feels like she was able to take one over the prison in a sense by taking down Mew Mew. While I do think a good chunk of the fights in Stone Ocean, oh my god, bro, trying to record this while sick, bro, it's like my nasally voice is dialed to like 11. Oh my god. While I do think a good chunk of the fights in Stone Ocean are lackluster, there are some really neat ideas that, if executed well, would have been some of the series' best. Stands like Feng Shui, Jumping Jack Flash, they're so specific, but they have these really cool ideas put to place to them that I just feel like were half-baked or undercooked. Going back to Jumping Jack Flash, I especially like Lang Wrangler and his stand, because while it does revolve around gravity, it's totally its own thing. His whole stand revolves around manipulating gravity toward the environment is what kind of makes it deadly. He stays out of harm's way and lets his victims fight against the gravity itself, hurling objects towards them or forcing them into spots that leave them vulnerable. And the centrifuges on his wrist are what gives him more offensive ability to deal the finishing blow. Oh, not to mention his stand design, like...
Jumping Jack Flash! お前に見ることができるかな。
Wow, chef's kiss. You also have the fights with the Dio sons in the latter half of the story as well, and I don't think they're all made equal. If I'm being honest, the only fight I really liked out of those was against Versus, because his stand Underworld is just really cool, and seeing him bicker with Poochie is like probably one of the funniest things to come out of part 6. And obviously you have the different encounters with Poochie throughout the story and his 3 different stands that he pretty much gets, which they're all really entertaining to watch. You have White Snake, Sea Moon, and obviously Made in Heaven, which are all perfectly crafted to be the most feared stands in this series. Not to mention they are all perfectly crafted to help guide him to his goal of reaching heaven. His stands are what makes him so feared and ultimately leads him to be one of my favorite villains in all of JoJo. So now I'm going to move on to the highlight of part 6 for me, which is Enrico Pucci and how amazing of a villain he is. Enrico Pucci, the one that sought heaven, follower and believer of Dio, his sister murdered by the cruel hands of this world, seeking of a way to change fate and be the center of it. Pucci's backstory is the most humbling and sad of any JoJo villain that there is. He had no crazy goal prior to meeting Dio, but the unfortunate circumstances in his life sent him down a spiral, looking for a greater purpose. Pucci is without a doubt to blame for what transpired, but that doesn't make it any less hard to sympathize for him. It's hard to make any villain with a grander than life mission seem relatable or have you put yourself in their shoes. And I think JoJo struggles with that most of all. The villains in this series are very comically evil, or if not that, they're a downright inhumane monster. Father Pucci is just so stone cold. He's a baller. Coolness factor alone can take you a long way in the world of JoJo. Man, he's just so cool. While Emporio did get the upper hand and was able to have Pucci, the only one that can control fate, end up taking himself out, it's also not that believable when you realize that Pucci damn near won. He reset the universe. While he did get defeated in the end, he created such everlasting effects that can you truly say he lost? He's so calculated and cunning, and he will never let Jolyne and crew just ever get within reach of him. Even when thrown off guard, he bounces back, he says his prime numbers, and he gets work done. When he produces results like that, it's hard to argue with the man. Maybe he's right. Maybe he is the sole chosen one. If it wasn't for the fact that we've seen 5 other parts before this and have tons of generational history and stories to be told to us, we would have known no better. Made in Heaven is such a terrifying stand. It's almost incomprehensible, demoralizing to even be a part of it. It's almost like cosmic horror in a sense. You lose all sense of time, you lose all sense of understanding, and seeing the bodies fall down of everyone dropping dead in the crew, it's a sad state to be in. You get the feeling that this isn't just typical JoJo gore for the sake of gore, but that it's over. He's won. Unable to see where he'll strike next, you just have to wait and hope and pray that he won't hit you. Everything is in Pucci's hands in this moment. You rarely ever see a JoJo part where the main JoJo doesn't get to do the final deed and end the climax and solve everything. Instead, you see Jolyne pushing Emporio because it's up to him now. With all this buildup of not just the fight against Pucci, but everything building up to it being as tiring as it was, and seeing Emporio in this new universe grasping to find any way to put an end to this. The long, tiring march is over. Emporio inserts weather forecast into him, and he takes out Pucci in the ghost room with no way to revert the effects of this cataclysmic event. Emporio just finds solemn that at least Pucci is dealt with, and maybe a new life can spring about again. And as he's placed back into the new universe, hope is not all lost as he sees figures very reminiscent of the friends he knew. While they aren't quite exactly his friends, he makes do with it, because at least they're alive, and he can reintroduce himself again and start a new life together. It was fate for Jolyne and the crew to take Emporio in again, because they accept him with open arms as he was crying. He gives his I am Emporio speech, hops in the car, and that's it, it's over. You see all the characters plastered up into the sky as they drive away, and it is very heartfelt until this starts to play. Seeing this for the first time brought tears to my eye. It's really hard to explain what makes JoJo so beautiful, but seeing it all combined together in this amazing sequence of just every part laid out in this motion graphic, just showing every innate little detail of every character from every part and what makes each part so unique and special, how every story is something to confide in. Stone Ocean is just this beautiful tying off point for the main series of JoJo. And while there are a lot of objective reasons to not like Stone Ocean, it hits you in the feels as much as, say, parts 1 and 2 does. This ending sequence is one of my favorite things to come out of the TV anime of JoJo. Coming back and playing Roundabout to be the end-all song to this main timeline of the series is just beautiful. This song has done a lot for the JoJo series and for me as a viewer and reader as well. I mean, for Christ's sake, this song is literally the reason I even was interested into wanting to see JoJo after hearing all the memes and just being really curious as to how they're able to get a licensed song like this in an anime. Not to mention hearing Roundabout for the first time in part 1 being a sole reason as to why my mom has even gotten into anime to begin with, and it all started with JoJo. Not to mention that JoJo is the series that brought me back into watching anime again. There's just quite nothing like it out on the market, and it is easily one of the most rewatchable series for me. Hirohiko Araki is a legend in the manga space. I mean, he's not in the Louvre for nothing. And he's certainly not doing Gucci brand deals for no reason, you know? His art is awe-inspiring. And it's crazy that he can be in the manga scene for so long and still not find it tiring and just keep producing what he loves. Even now with JoJo Lands, I can foresee this part being another staple in the series. JoJo obviously gets a lot of its reputation for being bizarre, like it is in the name, and just being downright weird. But I honestly love this series because of how heartfelt it can be. The strong theming of family, whether you're related to someone or not, is just really endearing. I can ramble on and on about how much the series means to me, but I believe Part 6 does a well enough job of explaining the beauty of JoJo to its audience even more than I could. Everything about Stone Ocean is just this perfect love letter to the series to end things off as well as start new beginnings, and just recollect on everything that has happened in the past. There's so much history within JoJo, both inside and outside the story, that it's just a marvel to have a behemoth of a series like this be so prominent in the art and entertainment industry as it is. And with that, this is my love letter to Stone Ocean. Yeah, this video took a while to make, not to mention I had a lot of stuff come up to kind of stop me from working on it, but it's out now. Hope you enjoyed. This is one of my more lengthy videos, and I kind of enjoyed these longer formed videos, but it does take a lot of effort to make, so let me know what video ideas you have, or if you have any series that you want me to check out, both anime or manga, it doesn't matter. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just look out for the next one, I guess, and I'll see you.